Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Retired Living True series. My name is Brett Janelle, and I'm your host today and moderator of our panel. Who met some of the panelists as you came in this morning? Who got to chat with the panelists? I see a few people. We'll come back to that. So good. And so today's topic is kind of a difficult, a challenging one. Or am I on? Yes. One of our biggest fears is probably, I'm being told I need to stand where people can see me. Oh, for the camera to see me. Thank you. So many things to remember. So one of our biggest fears, can someone yell out, what is a big fear we all have, we all share? Not remembering. What's a bigger fear than that? Dying. Getting old, dying, I heard. Yeah, death's usually a big fear. And then probably dementia fits in there somewhere as well, along with getting old. So it's kind of a difficult topic sometimes to talk about because none of us want to think about losing our memory, losing our ability to communicate, to have all of the wonderful memories. But it's really dear to my heart and Annette's heart. For some of you, you know that Annette and I are real estate agents. And we also, not only do we have a real estate company, we also have a move management company where we specialize in helping seniors who are downsizing. And probably about 15 years ago, before we really started focusing on helping seniors, we had a couple that we had to help, and she was dealing with advanced dementia, and the husband, they're in the same home, obviously, well, not obviously, but they're living together, and he was her caretaker, and it got to a point where he could no longer care for her, and they knew that they needed to move and go somewhere else. And they didn't really have any support or resources, and we met them and we helped them through that process. And we didn't really know a lot about dementia and how to interact and help people and support people with dementia. And it was a really troubling time emotionally for Annette and I, just seeing this couple who obviously loved each other and just going through that process and how gut-wrenching that can be to watch a loved one kind of disappearing in front of you, even though physically that they're there. So 3 years ago, we did this topic. And that was because we have a firm belief that if we're educated, we're empowered, we can make better decisions. If we're ignorant, we don't make very good decisions, especially not in the time of crisis. So we just really feel it's important to be able to get information out there in terms of the resources that are available in the community, both in terms of information and support, so that we can all be in a better position and help each other and our loved ones. So that's how this topic came about today. And obviously, as I said, we did it before, but we obviously have a full room again. So it's a topic that obviously there's a lot for us to learn about. So just before we jump into that, so I can regain my composure, for those who are new, who's new here today? Who hasn't been to one of our seminars before? Oh, wonderful. Well, welcome. It's great to see so many new hands. So the format for today is that I'm going to have 4 panelists who are experts in this field who are going to help me provide education regarding this topic. And we've put together some prepared questions in conjunction with our panelists. And I'm going to ask our panelists those questions on your behalf. And then at 11 o'clock or thereabouts, a little bit after, we're going to open it up for your questions where you can ask the panelists anything that you would like. So I just ask you to hold your questions. There's a page. You should all have a handout. There should have been a handout when you came in. Looks like so. There's a spot on the bottom where you can just write questions as you go along. If you want to ask the panelists something, please just jot it down. We won't take questions for the first hour. And then, as I said, at 11 o'clock, we'll open up for the audience for you to all ask questions. We've provided in the handout resources. So we'll talk about those as we go along. So this is a really good page in terms of resources that are in our community. And then the following page has some additional information sources on it. And then the last page for you to take notes if you so wish. We'll come back to that. Super. Just seeing if I've overlooked anything. Oh, binders. I heard someone asking about binders. So I messed up. We didn't end up bringing a whole lot of binders. For those who have been here before, we have these binders to put all of your notes in if you're a regular who comes along. So those who missed out on a binder this month will have plenty of binders next month. If you come again, we'll make sure you get a binder to be able to put your notes in there. Is that fair enough? Who wants to help me assemble binders later this week? Any volunteers? Oh, Linda. Okay, I might take you up on that. Thank you. So Alexa, are you good to help me at the front? We're ready with our panelists. Fantastic. So if my panelists can join me. So we have a little challenge today regarding our panelists because they all work with a vulnerable population, those who are dealing with various forms of dementia. They're not allowed out in public until April the 1st. They're all hoping to be here today. That was the plan originally, but we need to be safe. We need to look after those who are vulnerable. So my panelists are joining me virtually today. So can we just give our panelists a round of applause for making this happen? And just before I have them introduce themselves, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to all the education partners who make today possible. They're all working out hard outside and inside the room this morning, getting you all in, checked in, helping with all the technology to make this possible, coordinating everything so we could do this today a little differently than what we normally would do. I'm kind of feeling lonely in here, up here today, because I don't have my normal panelists with me. So this will be an interesting experience for all of us. So if I could begin, let's start with you, Denise. Could you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you do and why you're here with us today.
Good morning and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for having us and organizing this for us today, Brett. My name is Denise Han. I work for the Alzheimer's Association. I am a family care associate based out in Northern Nevada. We serve all of Northern Nevada for access to services, care, and support. The Alzheimer's Association is the largest not-for-profit organization promoting research and support for all those that are living with Alzheimer's and related disorders for the advancement of research, brain health, and the promotion of early detection and diagnosis to get that support and help. So part of my work and my job as a care associate is that I'm able to navigate resources in the community. We all work together. We have a live 800 helpline number. Brett has done a great job in giving you those resources and the handouts. We also provide education, support groups, access to resources in the community for care partners and those that are living with a diagnosis to have that access to resources and to live well post-diagnosis.
Thank you so much, Denise, and welcome. Nancy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Nancy Shiren Zelmo. I'm a professional gerontologist. I've worked in the field of aging and services for about 30 years now. I'm the principal of a consulting firm named Alzheimer's Care Associates, which provides, I set up in my team, we set up memory care, memory support communities in senior living. One being right there at the Clearwater at Ranchera, right there in Reno. I'm also the co-founder of a nonprofit called The Connected Horse, which helps people with newly diagnosed with dementia and their care partners navigate that using a horse. And we do that in Minden, Nevada, which is very interesting being up there. And I've been teaching gerontology, bringing people in this field for over 20 years. Very happy to be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jennifer.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jennifer Carson, and I am director of the DEAR program, which stands for the Dementia Engagement, Education, and Research Program. And we are located in the School of Public Health at the University of Nevada, Reno. Like Nancy, I am also a gerontologist. I have an interdisciplinary PhD in aging, health, and well-being. At the DEAR program, we're home for the home base of two statewide efforts. One is the NEST Collaborative, and we provide free volunteer-hosted social support and technology assistance, one-to-one technology tutorials to any older adults living with disabilities and veterans who are looking for some social support or assistance with technology. In addition, the DEAR program is the home base of the statewide Dementia-Friendly Nevada effort, where I have the honor of working in partnership with 11 communities across the state of Nevada who are working collaboratively through community-driven change to make their communities more respectful, educated, supportive, and ultimately more inclusive of people who are living with dementia and care partners. And one of those community groups is right here in Washoe County. And April 1st, we're going to start our planning to relaunch our in-person community group meetings. So please visit our website, dementiafriendlynevada.org, for information about that. And the last thing I want to share about myself is that I'm a family care partner. I have 3 dads in my life. I'm very blessed in that regard. One of my dads lives with Lewy body dementia and vascular dementia. He lives in his own home with support, both professional and family support. But I got to say, my dad's living well, and that it is possible to live well with dementia as long as we have more opportunities like this. Brett and Annette, thank you so much for helping educate our community, because this is what it takes in order for people who are living with dementia to have a positive future.
Welcome, Jennifer. And Kathy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be with you here today. I was a caregiver for my mother for 22 years. I'm also a longtime volunteer with the Alzheimer's Association, serving as a support group facilitator for people who have a parent with Alzheimer's or other dementia. I am a community educator presenting Alzheimer's classes to community groups. I serve as co-chair for the Nevada Advocacy and Public Policy Committee, and I'm an advocate and an ambassador working on Alzheimer's priorities with our state legislature and with our members in Congress. Thank you.
Welcome. So great to have you all. And I am so relieved this is actually working, because I was really nervous about having all of our panelists when they said they couldn't be in person. So, and thank you to our panelists for being willing to do this virtually. We had challenges this past week making this all happen. And when Denise and Jennifer, say Annette and Brett, we appreciate that, but it's all of our education partners that are on your binder that made this possible. It's not just us. Maybe we're the people they're communicating with mainly, but without the whole team, we wouldn't be doing this. So we're all a community helping each other. So if I could start with you, Denise, could you just describe for us, what is dementia? How does that fit into Alzheimer's? Because you're part of the Alzheimer's Association. Is it one of the same? Is it different for those of us quite sure?
Sure. And you'll see this interchangeably a lot. Dementia, Alzheimer's, what type of dementia, but actually dementia is the umbrella term for a series of symptoms that are concerning and not related to normal aging. So commonly that might be memory loss that disrupts daily life, difficulty with understanding and processing new information or expressing oneself. These are areas of concern that need to be addressed to your medical team. So the 10 warning signs that you see on that handout, those are different than what we would consider normal aging. So this is the building process of finding really what's going on. Is it a dementia diagnosis? What type? The most common form of dementia, by approximately 60 to 70%. And Jennifer will expand upon that a little bit. You heard her mention a couple of different diagnoses related to her family members. So we want to make sure that everyone is clear about what these symptoms are, how to communicate that to our medical team, and build to the next level of support and care and what to expect based on the determination of the type of dementia it is. The Alzheimer's Association in particular will support all dementia care regardless of the probable diagnosis of the dementia type.
Thank you, Denise. So Jennifer, when we were talking last week, I think it was, you mentioned some huge number of different types of dementia. You mentioned your father, Lewy body. How many dementias are there, and what is the most common? Is it Alzheimer's, and perhaps by what percentage? What are the most common 2 or 3 that we would encounter?
Yeah, Brett, there are actually more than 130 different conditions, 130 different conditions that can cause symptoms of dementia. And so like Denise was saying, the most common is Alzheimer's, about 60 to 80%. But then some of the other more common types that you've probably heard of are vascular dementia. And so that's the second most common cause of dementia. Actually, let me tell you that a lot of experts are now saying the most common type of dementia is a mixed dementia because of the role of vascular risk factors. And so a lot of people who are living with Alzheimer's disease also are living with vascular dementia. Another type of dementia that's pretty common is Lewy body dementia, which my dad has, but my dad also has vascular dementia. And so again, it's that combination of risk factors. So my dad has Lewy body and vascular dementia. Another more common type that we see diagnosed is frontotemporal dementia. And so those are just 4 different types of dementia or conditions that cause the symptoms of dementia, but there's 130 different conditions that can cause it. And so what's really important is getting an accurate diagnosis, because there are different treatments for the different conditions. And there are, for instance, some medications that my dad, who has Lewy body, absolutely cannot take, while a person who's living with Alzheimer's or maybe frontotemporal might be able to take those medications. Implications for things like different protocols for anesthesia during surgical procedures, et cetera. And so dementia is that umbrella term, but I would encourage all of you, never be content with the idea that somebody's just living with dementia. Work hard to get an accurate diagnosis, because it can make a tremendous difference in that person's ability to live well with their condition.
Thanks, Jennifer. And we'll come back and talk about how we go about getting an accurate diagnosis shortly. I heard a lot of paper shuffling when Denise was talking about the 10 warning signs. And Kathy, you were going to just run us through what are, just at a higher level, what are the 10 warning signs? So for those who didn't pick up on it in your handout on page 2, I think it is, we have 10 generalized warning signs of dementia. You tell us more, Kathy.
Be happy to. So this list of 10 warning signs was developed by the Alzheimer's Association as a tool to help identify unusual changes in a person's memory, thinking, or behavior. And change is the key word. If you see changes, then that's something to address. So the individuals who have these changes may experience one or more of these signs in different degrees. It is not a diagnosis. That's something a doctor should make. So if you have concerns, you should, as others have said, see a doctor. So let's start with number 1, memory loss that disrupts daily life. So some of the most common signs are forgetting recently learned information, that short-term memory. It's forgetting important dates or events, perhaps repeatedly asking the same question, relying on memory aids, so all those little Post-it notes that are posted everywhere, and not being able to do tasks that you once did very easily. Number 2, changes in planning or solving problems. So this is difficulty in developing or following a plan, or difficulty concentrating. You might observe a loved one just getting up and moving away and not being able to finish something. Difficulty completing familiar tasks. So this would be things like driving to a familiar place, or writing a grocery list, or playing a familiar game. They simply can't remember the directions anymore. Number 4, confusion with time or place. So this is losing track of dates or seasons, the passage of time. It's having confusion about where they are or how they got there. My mother used to ask me all the time, where am I? And I would say, you're in Reno. And she would say, but no, I'm in Pittsburgh. And that's where she grew up as a little girl. So she was constantly confused about where she was. Trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. So this is difficulty with balance. You may see your loved one falling or shuffling. Trouble reading, problems judging distance, determining color and contrast, all of which might affect driving ability. Number 6, new problems with words in speaking and or writing. So this is having trouble following a conversation or repeating oneself, which is very common. Difficulty finding the right word, or you may notice that they call something by the wrong word. Misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. So this is one of the common concerns for all of us. We can't find our cell phone, or we can't find our keys. But the key is, if you can retrace your steps, you probably don't have Alzheimer's. Someone with Alzheimer's has no idea how to retrace their steps or where to find something. They often put things in unusual places, Or the old standby, if dad can't find his wallet, he says somebody stole it. Number 8 is decreased or poor judgment. So this is using poor judgment when dealing, for example, with money. Every solicitation that comes in the mail or on a computer, they send a check to. People pay less attention to their hygiene and grooming. So they say, yeah, I took a shower, when you know they didn't take a shower, or they wear the same clothes day after day, or they put on a mismatched pair of shoes. Number 9 is withdrawal from work or social activities. So this is losing the ability to hold or follow conversations. It's withdrawing from social situations. So my mom kept saying, I don't want to go to church anymore. She quit volunteering at the VA hospital, just boom, quit, no explanation. We found out later she couldn't navigate the halls any longer. It's losing confidence. And our last sign is changes in mood and personality. So becoming confused, becoming suspicious. That's, saying somebody's stealing with them or stealing from them. Becoming depressed or fearful. Showing signs of anxiety or becoming easily frustrated. It's getting easily upset when in situations that are out of their comfort zone. For example, taking dad to a restaurant and having him be visually agitated or anxious because he can't read the menu, or the noise of the servers and the clinking of glasses disturb him. So those very briefly are the 10 warning signs and some of the symptoms of those. And if you have any questions about these, then we'll address these in the question and answer session. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. So you have a very short list there because we couldn't fit all of that information, but we did put a link below those 10 with a resource on the Alzheimer's Association website that goes into a lot more detail if you want to read more about those. It was interesting, Kathy, as you were speaking, I saw lots of acknowledgements of people having observed some of those warning signs that you mentioned. So maybe that helps, like, okay, that person I'm thinking of, possibly has dementia based on the warning sign, because sometimes we just don't understand why someone's behaving a certain way and we just don't realize, that they're dealing with something like dementia. So my question to say you, Jennifer, or Nancy, we haven't heard you speak yet. Can we self-diagnose? Do we realize we have dementia, maybe early on or later, or is it really we need someone else to point out that we now have challenges?
Hi. Well, thank you, Brett. People can self-diagnose and they diagnose themselves all the time in the fear of dementia. There's so much fear and stigma around this diagnosis that I see in my practice. A lot of people just worried, maybe they're stressed, maybe they've been isolated so long with COVID that now they're getting out and they're realizing they're not as sharp as they used to be. Like you guys are all out right now, which is great to see everyone out and about again and getting the socialization we need, which helps our brain. People do notice there are signs, and family members are usually the ones that have to point it out to them, and it's not an easy task to do at all. I like to affectionately say that we like to live on a place called the island of denial. And denial is there, and we don't really want to see some changes in our loved ones or our family members or friends, but we notice that things aren't just right. And as Jennifer said before, it's important that we get the accurate diagnosis. What if it is something that can be treated? What if it is something that we can do to improve our quality of life? So it's important to kind of get over the fear and stigma. It's easier said than done. And get off that island and go out and get some help. And we are able to do that now with a Medicare screening, thanks to the Alzheimer's Association. At age 65, everyone can get a cognitive screen at their annual appointment. So it's going to become more of a normalcy of looking for signs and then being able to treat them early on.
Great, thank you, Nancy. So just going further on that, maybe you can jump in, Jennifer. So there's a cognitive evaluation through Medicare at 65. If I'm less than 65 and have concerns, how do I go about getting an evaluation, a proper diagnosis? Or even if I'm over 65 and wasn't happy with that evaluation, where do I go to get a further evaluation if I have concerns for me or a loved one?
Well, in Nevada, we have some wonderful resources. So Renown Hospital, for instance, is a good place to go for a comprehensive cognitive assessment. So is the Cleveland Clinic Lewy Center for Brain Health, which is based in Las Vegas. And of course, people could go there for an in-person cognitive assessment, but they also offer a Zoom-based cognitive assessment, which is really handy for those of us who live in Northern Nevada. And so through a HIPAA compliant Zoom account, clinicians from the Cleveland Clinic Lewy Center for Brain Health can conduct almost a full cognitive evaluation remotely. So Zoom can actually be really helpful. And of course, for some people, they like that, the opportunity to do healthcare within the privacy of their own living room or kitchen table. So those are two really great resources, but a good place to start, of course, is also primary care. Your primary care physician should be able to help you navigate the different options available to you for a comprehensive cognitive assessment. And I really encourage people not to wait. It's really, of course, nobody wants to learn that they have dementia, but it can actually be very empowering because the sooner that you know what you're dealing with, the sooner you can jump off of what Nancy called the island of denial and make decisions for yourself, which is so important, and to communicate those decisions to your loved ones. And so it can be really empowering. Also, it provides you more opportunities to get connected with a variety of different helpful community-based supports and services. And there are so many. And so don't wait until you're experiencing a crisis to navigate all the different supports that are available to you, including a lot of wonderful support group opportunities, both for people living with dementia and for family care partners. And these types of support groups are filled, unlike the one that Kathy helps in the Alzheimer, and Denise with the Alzheimer's Association, their support groups help us learn important tips and strategies about how to manage the symptoms of dementia so that we can live well. In addition, an earlier diagnosis provides some important insights for possible safety implications. For instance, when my dad was diagnosed, he didn't just stop driving, but he did decide that he would have weekly driving checks with my brother to ensure that he is still safe to drive. My dad made the decision not to drive about a year ago, but only after a couple of years of us doing monthly safety checks on his driving. My dad also, upon learning of his diagnosis, decided to have monthly medication checks so that my brother would ensure that he's taking his medications properly. And then it changed to weekly. But it's that type of decision making that can be really empowering and ultimately help support people in living well. And then lastly, I just want to say that earlier diagnosis gives you opportunities to help advocate and improve people's understandings about dementia and the needs of people who are living with dementia. We need to break the stigma of dementia. And that's how we're going to help educate community members about dementia. We got to get it out of the closet. And I just want to say, because no, we haven't talked about it yet, 10% of the population 65 and over is living with dementia. It's 10%. So if we, take the room of people that I can see on the Zoom screen, know that while it may not be considered a normal part of aging per se, it's a very common experience. And the better that we could talk about it as people who are living with dementia, the better we are able to break that stigma.
Thank you, Jennifer. And we'll come back to support groups and some education a little bit later. But I just wanted to ask you, Nancy, just briefly, we can all learn more about it perhaps in a support group or another session that we're going to do. But for someone with dementia, what are the challenges that they encounter typically? And then conversely, a caregiver looking after someone who's dealing with dementia, what are their challenges? What are the different challenges we face for those who aren't aware?
Well, one of the challenges is just in daily living and navigating their own life. And as Kathy's mentioned, in those warning signs, they become more apparent. And so the excess disability and the challenges it puts on the care partner are extreme because they notice there's a change, and yet, we might get a little bit irritated with someone who is moving a bit slower than normal, etc. So it's a challenge for the pair. I really like to say that this journey is, people are going on this journey together with their care partner as well as the person with the diagnosis. So they both face challenges on a daily basis, and it mostly shows up in activities of daily living. That's what we call just, getting up, getting going in the morning, doing what you're supposed to be doing, being self-motivated. We see a big change in that as well, and people might become a little bit, you seem like they're withdrawn. And again, I see now after COVID, we are seeing a lot more of this, and I'm not sure if it's just the languishing after COVID and living with COVID going forward, or we're seeing changes of people that have been isolated and really are having real challenges now. So these affect both the care partner and the person living with dementia, and I really like to think about them as a team.
Thanks, Nancy. So is this isolation potentially causing people to have dementia, or is it dementia-like symptoms because of depression, isolation? Could I think got dementia because I've isolated myself during this period of time, and maybe that's not
Perhaps.
the case?
I mean, it may seem a little bit because we're having a hard time getting back into our normal groove, if you will, but we don't know. So as Jennifer has said, let's get some help. Let's look into it and see, is this just we're languishing after being isolated with COVID and the loneliness and depression that has affected the older adult population, children, everyone, quite frankly? Or do I have real serious problems that I need to have checked that were not monitored in the last 2 years?
Thank you. So sometimes we hear about dementia being reversible. Maybe Jennifer, you could just talk to that. Is dementia reversible, or is there something else we need to know when we hear that?
Yeah, well, reversible is a very strong word. And in the scientific community, what we would probably say instead is that we can reduce our risk of developing dementia. To date, I don't know of any scientific support for the idea that dementia is reversible. If it is reversible, then it probably wasn't dementia. So not reversible, but there's a lot that we can do to help reduce our risk of developing dementia. The number one risk factor for developing dementia is age. And there's, to my knowledge, no good alternative for that one. Well, actually, I guess there is an alternative, but nobody likes it. And so as we age, our risk of developing dementia increases. Earlier I said 10% of the population 65 and over. By the time we're 85 and over, it's almost like flipping a coin. About 50% of the population aged 85 and over is living with dementia. But there's a lot that we could do across the life course to help reduce our risk. In fact, 40% of dementia risk is modifiable. Okay, 40% of dementia risk is modifiable. Those are pretty good odds. I'm gonna do what I can to help mitigate that 40%, but it doesn't start at the age of 65. It actually starts at birth. Actually, it probably starts in the womb. And then we actually accumulate risk across the whole life cycle. And so there's a really great article publicly available written by the Lancet Commission that summarizes all of the latest research on risk reduction. And that's my go-to source for information about risk reduction. We published a summary of that scientific article on the Dementia Friendly Nevada website. If you go to our website and click on the button for brain health, it will actually summarize the 12 things that help us modify risk of developing dementia as we age. Even if you're living with dementia, a lot of people are living with it for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. I personally know people who have been living with it for 20 years. Know that even upon diagnosis, there's a lot that people can do to help manage dementia. So it's never too late to start a good brain health regimen. And if you visit the Cleveland Clinic's healthybrains.org website, it's really cool. It's this interactive website where you can actually assess and explore your own brain health as it relates to 6 different pillars of brain health. And so in summary, those 6 pillars are physical exercise, move it or lose it is what we could call that, food and nutrition, really lots of strong support for a Mediterranean diet, keeping up with medical health, ensuring that you go to those annual appointments. They're so important, and keeping up with your oral health as well. Sleep and relaxation, getting a good night's sleep. That's when your brain does a lot of work to help clean itself up while you're sleeping. Mental fitness, so that's the use it or lose it. And also social interaction is another pillar of brain health. And so when we think about what we were just talking about with COVID and why a lot of people have maybe experienced a cognitive decline during COVID, it could be when we look at those 6 brain health factors, it could be a reflection of our challenges in really helping to uphold those pillars.
Thanks, Jennifer. And the resource that Jennifer was just referring to, we put at the top of the 3rd page of your handout, Healthy Brain at the Cleveland. Say that again, Jennifer. Cleveland, it's on the handout, I believe. Cleveland Clinic. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, it's really, it's Alexa's put up a slide. Yeah. So you can go and actually take a assessment there yourself to see where you kind of rate on a whole range of things in terms of your brain health. And it was really interesting. After you told me about it last week, Jennifer, I went and checked it out, and I'd encourage everyone to go there, sign up. There's an assessment. There's lots of great information on how to minimize, reduce risk in terms of developing dementia. So yeah, thank you, Jennifer, because I wasn't aware of that. So that's a great resource. And I think you mentioned it too, Nancy. So thank you both.
The only other thing that I want to mention real quick, I know you wanted us to talk a little bit about Aduhelm.
About what's up? We'll come back to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll probably come up in Q&A. Just jumping back to being being reversible. So you said if it's reversible, it probably wasn't dementia. Can you just rattle off 2 or 3 examples of that? Because I know it comes up. What would some of those be? I think Nancy mentioned one being depression, can look like dementia-like. What else?
Medication side effects, vitamin deficiencies, improper nutrition, an infection, an underlying infection, most commonly among older adults, urinary tract infections. So delirium and depression can look a lot like dementia on the surface. But the good news is you can treat delirium, you can treat depression. And if somebody has cognitive improvements, then we understand that they were probably experiencing delirium or depression, not necessarily dementia. But Nancy, those are some other common ones that we should probably know?
We see a lot of B12 deficiency. And that ties back obviously to nutrition, isolation, brain tumors. I mean, there's a lot of things that could be treated that we aren't necessarily aware. So before we just put, as I affectionately say, the scarlet letter of D for dementia on our chest, and I think my audience is old as me and understands what that means with the scarlet letter, we don't have to just take that label on until we empower ourselves to be proactive and see what else might be going on. So we're not trying to give false hope, but just knowledge. Knowledge is power, and that's what this series is about.
Thank you, Nancy. And when we were talking last week, I love the term you used. There are some snake oil salesmen out there.
Oh, okay. Well, yes, there are a lot of snake oil salesmen out there, as my physician friends say, and people are selling, things on TV and vitamins and all kinds of things that the Alzheimer's Association also has some resources related to that. Be careful. There's no miracle. As Jennifer said, it's a life course. So I'll take the pill of lifestyle any day of improving my lifestyle as opposed to something that comes in a jar, including eating real kale instead of a vitamin of it. So be careful of what's out there. Just be an informed consumer. There's a lot of people selling false hope. We don't want to give false hope. We want to give true hope, and that is in fighting it yourself.
Thank you, Nancy. Well said. So let's just talk about moving. That's something Annette and I always come across in our retirement communities here. So we always get the question, if a loved one has dementia and I do need to make a move, and I'll have Jennifer talk about how we want to stay in our home. Who wants to stay in their home as long as possible? We all do, don't we? Yeah. So we'll talk about that. But if we do need to make a move and we realize what's perhaps coming down the path for our family member, any comments or guidance? Should I do it sooner? Wait till it's advanced? Nancy, Jennifer, what are your thoughts for the audience?
Well, I'll start out. Since I work in senior living primarily, there's a lot of my own father-in-law, we had to find a place for him to live because he couldn't live with us. And my mother-in-law had passed away. And so there's many options out there, and people want to stay at home as long as possible. There's many resources in your community that you can access to help someone have a good day and living well with dementia in their home. But then there are times when it's too hard on the family, there's too much stress, that people have to look for alternative settings, and finding that right setting is most important. There's smaller homes, there's larger homes, there's more amenities. Are you looking for some place that has transportation versus a healthy lifestyle? Do you want a place that has a bar in it? I don't know what it is, but everyone is a little bit individual, and looking for that option, being proactive, look in advance, don't wait till there's a crisis. There's many options for senior living in your community, and there's many options for home care and resources that can come into your home, adult day programs. So I know Denise and Kathy know more about what's right there, and Jennifer in Reno. But there are so many options, but don't wait. Start planning in advance. My husband and I, he wants to retire in 2 years. And so we started cleaning closets now because I don't want my daughters to have to do that. And really, if we have to downsize, there's a lot of things that we need to get rid of or donate. And so looking at things in advance and being proactive, as Jennifer said, about your own life course is most important.
Thank you. Kathy, maybe you can jump in. And who would agree that Nancy looks way too young to be even thinking about retiring? She looks like she's 25 to me. So, yeah. Kathy, what would you add to that, given you work with the support groups and people who are dealing with it?
I would say it's such an individual decision. Nancy, really said it best. Moving a loved one is an emotional experience. It's extraordinarily difficult. We had to experience this, and we did it sort of in stages. My mother, we moved to a memory care unit first. She was simply no longer able to stay in her home. She was not safe. She couldn't tell strangers from family members. She couldn't turn water off. She couldn't come to our house because we have one of those 70 houses where every single room is on a different level. And she visually just couldn't see a step down. So we knew she was going to fall. So we started out with a memory care unit and we moved her there. I was terribly upset about that because I felt that I had failed her because I could no longer take care of her. I took care of her for 10 years. The memory care unit actually was wonderful because we had a lot of fun together. I got to be a daughter again instead of a caregiver. And that was a huge emotional release for me. Unfortunately, she fell because that's one of the problems with Alzheimer's. And we had to move her then to a skilled nursing facility, which was more hospital-like than home-like. But having done it in stages made it easier. So again, it's being informed, it's checking out facilities because you never know when an accident might happen. I thought my mother would stay in memory care forever, but I had checked out skilled nursing facilities so that when it did happen, and it happened on a 3-day weekend, so it was really difficult to get help finding a facility. I already knew the facilities so that we could move her. So I think checking out facilities ahead of time, and as Nancy said, being prepared, have a plan. It's just an incredibly difficult thing to move someone. One more thing, I do think it's easier to move someone when they're in the earlier stages. I've had people move to Reno to take care of a loved one, or they've moved here for tax purposes. And some of them regret moving because then their loved one is much more confused in the new house. So the earlier that you can move them to a situation, they might adapt better.
Thank you, Kathy. Denise, did you want to jump in and add anything to that?
Yeah, consistent with really being a care partner for someone and assisting them in making a plan for the future and kind of reducing the guilt factor. We know that we really need to take care of our care partners, especially when the avenue of being able to provide the type of help stays healthy for you as a care partner. And making a decision for a move, sometimes that can be really guilt-ridden, and it shouldn't be, because you're always going to be an advocate and a care partner for your loved one, no matter what the situation might be with the care, whether it's in a residential community or home-based.
Thank you. And while I have you, Denise, how do we determine when someone's no longer in a position to be making the decisions for themselves with dementia? How do we kind of get to that point and help them? Jennifer talked about a dad and driving. We often get it now. Education partners, the person with dementia is planning the move and then they're not moving, they are moving. I'm going to give up my license. I'm not going to give up my license. I can take care of my finances. I don't want anyone else touching it. But there's some point where even though they think they can, they can't. How do we determine that? How do we help that person? What are some skills and resources for us to be able to get through that?
Sure. And consistent with what we've been conveying is really early detection, early planning, as early as possible is so important, because you can involve your loved one in helping make those decisions and make a plan. And every person that's living with a diagnosis is going to manifest their symptoms differently and at different time periods. So it's learning as a care partner how to maintain that emotional connection based upon where your loved one is coming from. So it may be early on, they decided, okay, we're going to downsize, we're going to make a plan for safety in the house. This is what we're going to do with our legal and financial planning and having that reviewed. And then maybe some time later, there's like, wait a minute, I didn't agree to that. And that also includes driving. So it's really maintaining that emotional connection with where that person is living with a diagnosis at that time, making a plan, being emotionally connected throughout, and trying to convey a message from where their communication level might be. With driving, that certainly is a safety issue. There's a lot of information on our website at alc.org about difficult conversations, and those really include making a plan for the future, legal and financial planning, when to stop driving, and how we can kind of come with them along that way as things change in the future, and support yourself as a care partner. Ask for help and seek respite when needed is important.
Thank you. So maybe Kathy and Jennifer, maybe Jennifer, you could jump in with your dad, and Kathy with your mum. Both of them, your parents, were they able to come to their own conclusions that I can no longer drive or look after my finances? Or did one of you have to step in at some point and say, okay, and is it different for everybody? Jennifer.
So my family embraces a shared decision-making model. First, when my dad was diagnosed, we really committed to supporting my dad's autonomous decision-making to the fullest extent possible. Just because a person has been diagnosed with dementia does not mean that their rights should be stripped from them. And so it's really important to recognize that a diagnosis of dementia does not mean that the person lacks capacity necessarily to make their own decisions. However, it is a progressive condition. And so knowing that that the individual will need some support in the future. That's why with my family, we sat down and really talked about how we can create a shared decision-making model for my family. And so my dad did appoint my brother, his financial power of attorney, appointed me his medical power of attorney. When there are decisions to make, we sit at the table together for one of those great family meetings. We talk about the issue. My brother and I both prioritize the perspective and preferences of our father above our own preferences and perspectives. It's his right to decide for himself. And sometimes it's also his right to make some bad decisions that we wouldn't make. But what we try to do is help our dad understand this notion of interdependency, that his decisions ultimately affect me and my brother and our families. And when we can appreciate that interdependency, it makes accepting a shared decision-making model more palatable. The truth is, I don't think I have ever been completely independent and autonomous in my own decision-making in most decisions in life because I'm part of a family. And I have friends and colleagues. And usually when I make a decision, I'm taking into account the other people who are part of my life. And when you're living with dementia, it's the same thing. But what's important is that we recognize that interdependency and as early as possible, start paving the pathway for an effective shared decision-making model. My dad has already effectively communicated to my brother and myself all of his preferences for advanced planning. And we will do our very best to ensure that my dad's preferences and priorities are upheld.
Thank you, Jennifer. But the key there was you did that early with your dad, not when it was advanced. You've talked about it, had those hard conversations, and come up with, you know, the plan appropriate for your family. What about you, Kathy?
I'm trying to unmute. My experience was completely the opposite of Jennifer's. I started caring for my mother when my stepfather passed away. So that was back in 1997. That was 25 years ago. And I noticed things that looking back were symptoms of Alzheimer's, but I didn't know about Alzheimer's at the time. I'm not even sure I'd heard the word. So we sort of fumbled around. I thought that she was just grieving and that she would sort of snap out of it in a couple months. But as the months went by and I was spending more time with her, I began to grow more concerned. So at one of her yearly physicals, I talked to the doctor who reassured me that she was just getting a little older and she was just fine. And so I went home thinking I'm the one going crazy because I think something's wrong with my mother. And this continued for several years until I absolutely stood my ground and asked for an evaluation of her. And the doctor said no, that he would not do that unless my mother agreed to it. So I had to really be the bad guy and prod my mother into saying she wanted an evaluation. She was given the mini mental and she missed 9 of the 10. She only got that George Bush was president, and I don't know how she knew that. But the doctor at that point then recommended a neurologist. So we lost critical years where we could have made decisions together. By the time she was finally diagnosed, and the diagnosis was severe cognitive impairment. So he still did not say that my mother had Alzheimer's. So I still didn't know about the disease. So again, we lost all sorts of time and knowledge. So I ended up having to make a lot of really difficult decisions because my mother was too far advanced to be able to participate. So I think now, 25 years later, people might be able to have more cooperation from doctors than I did, but getting an early diagnosis, I think, is absolutely imperative so that the person really does have say in what they want. And it wouldn't be left up to just one care partner. I had to make decisions that were excruciating.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So let's talk about support then. So if we or a family member, someone we know is dealing with it, where do we go in the community? What would be our first step? Maybe you could start, Denise. What are the first 2 places, great resources that we have? I know we have a whole list of resources, but what are the top 2? And jump in, Jennifer, just here in our community to start with. If I don't know where else to go, what's
Absolutely.
the first phone call I make?
Well, thank you for compiling those, Brett, because you'll see a list of very, very helpful resources. With the Alzheimer's Association, that helpline number, if you could either access alz.org or helpline for a variety of resources. And that could be our support groups in education. It could be the Community Resource Finder, which would help you access other services in the community. Where do I get care support? What are my respite resources? So that's kind of a one-point navigation. Dementia Friendly also has a list of support services. The state of Nevada And an easy way to research this is Nevada Care Connection or Nevada 211, which also will help you as navigate care and support for resources regionally. For the Alzheimer's Association, for you to have access to what kind of a support group I want to attend. Kathy her group is for adult children caring for their parents. That's very different than if you're caring for a spouse. So very specific support groups can be routed through your zip code, or the Nevada, our local program at Northern Nevada Alzheimer's Association office would be able to help you navigate towards getting those support groups and education, access to community resources, Nevada Care Connection, Nevada 211. These are all really important connections for us to be well informed of. Kathy had mentioned, making a plan for the future. And so knowing your resources, we don't want to hear people panicked. We don't do well when we are operating in crisis. And I'm sure Jennifer can add to this, and Kathy give input on what some of the questions they get from their folks that are currently care partners for a loved one. It's complicated. We want to talk with our peers. We want to know a plan. We want to know resources and where to get the help that we need.
Thank you, Denise. So if I was to summarize, because that was a lot of information, at least it was for me. So on the second page of our handout, what I take away from what you just said, if I was to circle anything, it would be dementia friendly Nevada, and there's a phone number, Nevada. You can tell I'm not local. My father-in-law, who is, because my wife was born here, always makes fun of me when I mispronounce the state. But you'll all forgive me, won't you? And then the second one is the Alzheimer's Association. Actually, it's at the top, the 24/7 helpline that Denise mentioned, the 800 number. So if I was to take anything away, if I don't know where else to go, I'd call one of those phone numbers and they'll help guide me to where I need to be, to all the other resources that Denise touched on and our other panelists have touched on. So I just want to talk to you, Kathy, about support groups. So that's come up a number of times. And Denise just mentioned you lead one of the support groups. How does a support group help us? Why would I want to join a support group? Is that for me, the person dealing with dementia? Is that for my loved one? Is it both? Can you just tell us a little bit more how that could help us?
Sure. So as Denise talked about, and I alluded to earlier, I work with people who have parents with dementia. As I was saying before, I didn't even know the word Alzheimer's. I didn't know where to go for help. And it was an older friend of mine who one day called me and said, I'm going to give you a phone number for the Alzheimer's Association, and they have a support group. So that was my very first exposure to the word Alzheimer's and actually getting some help. And it is the best thing I ever did. My support group is so much fun. Someone said to me, I thought we'd just be wringing our hands and crying, but we laugh a lot. What we do is offer emotional support for others. I've never been in a different support group. I've only been in mine. I started with it and then became the facilitator. So I don't know how other people work theirs. But what we do is each person is allotted some time to talk about their situation, the difficulties that they're facing, the challenges. And then we as a group can offer them suggestions. People will say, oh yeah, I've had that with my dad too. He doesn't like to shower either, but these are the things that I did to help get him in the shower. And then someone else will say, oh yeah, I have some other ideas. So it's getting this compilation of suggestions. It's also emotional support. People will often say, oh my gosh, I just think you are the best caregiver in the world. You know, I've learned so much from you. So it's validating what they're doing. It's just such a support in every single way. I believe strongly in educating people since I was so uneducated. So in addition to all of the support that they're getting from each other, I make sure they have handouts every single time we have our meetings, so that they're learning about healthy lifestyles. They're learning about advances in research. We meet twice a month it's supposed to be an hour and a half, but our group is very tight and very large. And so we often meet for 2 hours, sometimes 3, which we're not probably supposed to do, but people love it. And we sit around, I make cookies and we just talk. And people go home with education and support and the ability to face the next 2 weeks of caregiving.
Thank you, Kathy. So yours is for an adult child helping their parent. So Denise, is there another support group if I have a spouse or someone else that I'm caring for? And is there a group for those dealing with dementia themselves individually?
There is, absolutely there is. So Northern Nevada support groups, as we transition to virtual this last couple of years, we'll be able to be determined when we can meet in person, and it might be a mix. One of the good things about virtual is that we've all learned to connect in a different way. So for our Northern Nevada support groups, we have one for spouses in particular that's held in Washoe County and Reno. We have a group in Minden, 2 in Carson City, 1 in Winnemucca. Through our website, we also want to connect those that are living with Alzheimer's with an early stage diagnosis for the opportunity to participate in activities, brain health, virtual programs that have been created and offered more frequently through COVID. So that's a good thing. And we do have a Living with Alzheimer's early stage for the person living with a diagnosis and their care partner that you can find resources through our website at alz.org. And we would route you towards our Northern California partners that organize early stage activities. So that's an option too.
Thank you. And then Nancy, I just wanted to jump to you before we move to Q&A. So tell us about the resources or help that our retirement communities, in particular memory support communities like Clearwater that you work with, how do they fit into this to help us and support our community? How can they be a resource for us?
Well, as Kathy's mentioned, once a family decides that it's not right for them to live at home, then they have options of living in assisted living services, as well as in a memory, I like to call it memory support instead of memory care community. And so there's many options. Families will choose that sometimes just for the dining program, the life enrichment and engagement activities, outings, things that are built in for a person to really re-engage with that local community that they're living in. And then in a memory support community, they should have the same activities they have in the assisted living community as well, maybe modified for the population, but not necessarily just people sitting around watching TV all day. Very engaging and purposeful activities for life enrichment. So things that are meaningful to that person, knowing about whom they are, what they've always enjoyed, what they can still enjoy doing, maybe in a modified way. So there is a lot of life, and that's why I like to say, as Jennifer does, it's living with dementia. It keeps going. There's many opportunities based on what communities you choose. So ask about what they do. What are things that your mom is always like cooking? Does she still have the opportunity for cooking? Your husband always played golf. Can he go to the driving range, or can he play miniature golf in the community? Can I bring my dog? Whatever it is, ask those questions when it's time, and you'll find the right place. There's many different options. I think what's most important in senior living is that there's quality assurance and things that make sure that the program is still going as the way it was intended to be designed. And so I do quality assurance as well as creating these type of communities. And it's really important that we go back and walk the walk. And what you've been sold, it's really happening, and it's really happening for your mom in an individualized way. So I think about senior living as very individualized. It should be reflective of the residents who live there, not a cookie cutter.
And it sounds like from what you all said, we should go and explore these things early in the process, whether that's where we're going to move to or stay at home or whatever the case may be, but just know what all the options are. So I guess I'm asking, are the communities offended at all if we go early just to learn more, to find out more, or can we use them as a resource?
No, they're not offended. They're always happy to help. If it's not the right place, then they should be able to refer you to a place that you're looking for, as they know what other resources in their community and who their competitors are, quite frankly. So they're able to find the right space for you, or maybe even suggest that they stay at home a little bit longer. It just depends on what's right for that family.
Right. Thank you, Nancy. So I think what we'll do now is open it up to your questions. Does anyone have questions? If not, I can keep talking to the panelists. Does anyone have questions? No questions? No, there are some questions. Okay, so we do want to do Q&A. Just before we do, Alexa, can you just pull up that slide? So everybody should have, I'm trying to remember what I was told I had to do today. I have a team that tell me, Brett, this is what you need to do. So we have a seminar coming up next on April the 14th, back to Thursday for our program, The Psychology Behind Letting Go. So I know our panelists talked about having stuff. Does anyone have too much stuff at home? Just a couple of you. We'll see you next month. So we're going to talk about the psychology of letting go of our stuff, or actually I think a better term, one of our move managers who worked for us before she retired, she'd refer to it all as treasures. Does anyone have trouble letting go of their treasures? I know I have treasures. And Annette's always saying, do you need all those treasures in the attic? It's like, okay, I can let some of my treasures go. I haven't used them for years. So that's what we're going to talk about, the psychology. How can we let things go that are no longer serving our lives anymore? And it's part of a 3-part series on letting things go, downsizing, liquidating, how do we simplify our lives? And then on March the 24th, AJ, are you here in the room? Oh, great, can you come up here, AJ? We're going to do a follow-on from this seminar titled Latent Dementia, What to Expect. And can you tell us a little bit about what you're going to talk about at that workshop?
My name is AJ Reed, and I'm a nurse with Kindred Hospice. You know, that's kind of a scary word to hear up front, but I do a lot of community education. So on the 24th, we're going to have discussions about when you are or someone you love is diagnosed with dementia. We'll review the stages of dementia, what to expect, how to support an individual as they move through these stages.
Just a little closer.
Sorry. And again, we'll review like the community resources to help support you as we go through those stages. So hope I can provide some good information that may be new to some of you.
Awesome. Thank you, AJ. AJ is an excellent educator. We've had her do different sessions before. So you should all have a handout titled Workshop with a little bit more detail. And if you would like to attend that workshop again on March the 24th, on your yellow evaluation form, I have paper going everywhere. On your yellow evaluation form, there is a checkbox. Actually, it's the second checkbox. The first one is if you'd like to attend next month's seminar, we'll get you pre-registered. So all you have to do is check the box, stick your name tag on the bottom, and we'll see you next month. And the second box is for the workshop. However, Alexa kindly put together directions again for the workshop. It's at our office, and it can sometimes be challenging to find because it simply looks like several other buildings. So if you are coming to the workshop, don't rely on Google, as I'm sure others who have been to the workshops will attest. You'll end up in a parking lot somewhere and wonder where you are. So you really do need to follow these directions and use the photograph so you can identify the building. So keep that if you're coming to the workshop. And then what else, Alexa? What's next? Oh yeah, our Seniors Education Expo. So last month we got a poll of the room whether we should do a 1 day of full education at this location. And the overwhelming opinion was we should. So all of our education partners have been super busy this last month putting this together. And you should have a flyer. Did everybody get one of these when we came in? Or actually, it was probably on your table. So let me just tell you a little bit about this. So on April the 27th, which is a Wednesday, at this location, we're going to have a huge marquee sitting out in the parking lot. So part of the parking lot will be taken up, and that's where we're all going to enjoy breakfast together. We're going to have a continental breakfast and hang out with each other for about an hour. And then at roughly at 9 o'clock, I believe it is, we're all going to come into this room and hear from a keynote speaker. And then this room's going to get divided, and then there'll be one session in here, one session in here, and then in room C behind us will be another session. So there'll be 3 sessions running at the same time you can choose from. And we're going to do that 4 times for the day. So there'll be a total of 12 educational sessions from some fantastic speakers on a whole range of topics on health, legal, financial, aging well, and more. And then at, I don't know what time lunch is. Noon, around noon, it's a good time. We'll have a lunch buffet out in the marquee, and then we'll have another session, and there'll be exhibitors out in the marquee as well. And then we're going to have a whole lot of drawing surprises. So if you would like to participate, the cost is $20, and the directions are on that flyer. And just to help us have an indication of how, this is our first time doing it, this expo idea. So just so we have an idea of how much we need to market the event, or whether it's already sold out after today, because it's about this number of people who can attend. There's in the middle of the yellow page is a box, and on there it says Seniors Education Expo, April 27, 2022. Please let us know your interest in the upcoming Education Expo. I plan on registering to attend. So if you're going to go home and register on the website, check that box. If you're thinking about it and you may register, check the next box. And if you know that you're busy that day or it doesn't work for you, if you could just check the last box, and that'll just really help us with our planning. That would be a huge help to our team. So thank you. Don't leave anything out, Alexa or Annette. Come up here, Annette. Does everyone know my beautiful wife, Annette? Doesn't she look wonderful today? Oh, you don't have a microphone. AJ, can I borrow your, is that on? Thank you.
To put on the expo, it does cost money for this. That's why we have the $20. However, any excess money that we bring in, we are going to be donating it to Sanford Center for Aging and their what do you
Yeah,
call
so
it?
Center for Aging, for those who aren't aware, is part of the University of Nevada, Reno. And Sanford Center for Aging specializes, that's where Jennifer's husband, actually, he is the director of the Sanford Center for Aging, Peter Reed. And several of the people here are partners. I'm not seeing them at the moment, but Yvonne and Yvonne, there you are down the back, part of Sanford Center for the Aging. And those who have been here before have heard from many speakers from the Sanford Center for Aging, different doctors and psychologists and so forth. So we're going to donate any excess funds to a program with Sanford Center for Aging, whether it's the drug program or we'll work out which one.
Right.
So I guess the point it's making is we're not trying to make money out of this. We're going to make zero money. We just want to provide more great education.
Just more education for you. So yes, this is not a money maker for us. It's just being able to give back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Annette. Anything else? I think we're good on that. I have paper going everywhere. What have I forgotten, Alexa? We're good. So let's jump into Q&A. So mic runners, can I have my two mic runners come up the front? Oh, there we are. Debbie, could you just introduce yourself as one of our mic runners today? You're going to take the left side of the room as we look out. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Debbie Wood.
Hold it up nice and close, Debbie.
Pardon me? It's not,
No,
there it
yeah,
is.
just keep
Better?
up close.
Hi.
Yep.
I'm Debbie Wood. I'm with Flagstar Bank. I'm a mortgage lender who specializes in normal mortgages and also reverse mortgages. So that's what I do. And I'm really excited about the expo. And I hear there's some great prizes.
There are.
Yeah, some good ones. So
Who wants to have lunch with me? Or maybe we'll have a special day. Yeah?
I don't know if that's a prize.
Thank you for putting up your hand, whoever you did. Otherwise, that question might have backfired when no hands go up. And AJ.
I'm still AJ. I'm still a Kindred. Good to see you guys.
Excellent. So Alexa, if we can get our panelists up full screen if they're not already. And Debbie, do you have someone over there with a question? Or AJ, who's got their hand up first? Who's going to take the first question? We're going to start on this side.
My name is Patty, and I just had a question about the expo when you were saying it's going to be divided in 4 different categories. If you go to one tent and go to another one, is everything the same, or you go to this program at this tent, this program? So if you go to one, are you going to miss it if you go to a different one?
Yeah, so there'll be 12, great question, thank you. So there are 12 sessions for the day, 12 different education sessions, approximately 40 minutes each. So you'll get to pick 4 of those. So you'll be able to attend 4 out of the 12 because they'll be running concurrently in 3 different rooms here. So this room will be split in half. There's a big wall you can see back there that breaks this room up into 2 rooms. So one session will go in this side of the room, one session will be in that side of the room, and then there's another big training room in the back and there'll be a session in there. So at 9 o'clock, you'll pick which of the 3 rooms, which session you want to go to. Difference, yeah. And you'll get, we have a guide that's just being put together at the moment with all the details of what each one is, who the speaker is, the topic, the details. So you'll get that when you come in and register in the morning, collect your materials, and then you'll circle, okay, I want to go to that one, that one, that one, and that one. Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah, sorry, I could have explained it a lot better, so thank you. Mike over here, AJ next, and Debbie, question over on this side.
Okay, my name is Joe, and I wanted to ask any one of you, is there any way, shape, or form for dementia to be avoidable?
Who would like to take that?
I'll happily jump in there.
Thanks, Jennifer.
you can definitely reduce your risk of developing dementia by about 40%. So 40% of dementia risk is modifiable primarily through lifestyle choices across the life course. But even if you have developed dementia, you could still really slow the decline through different lifestyle choices. 60% is still unknown, and that's a challenge. So you can avoid it in terms of reducing your risk. Even if you did everything you could, though, to modify risk with that 40%, there's still 60% that is unaccounted. Well, some of that 60% is unaccounted. Some of it's genetic risk, and some of it is age, which is also not avoidable. And so there are important actions that we can take to help reduce our risk of developing dementia.
Thank you, Jennifer. And a great place to go, please correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, would be that Healthy Brains by Cleveland Clinic on the 3rd page of our handout, a great education resource there. Would that be the best place maybe to start, Jennifer, if we're wanting to avoid as much as possible?
Yeah, and again, the Dementia Friendly Nevada website also has a brain health page where we try to consolidate and summarize the latest scientific information about risk reduction. But if anybody tells you that they can reverse it or give you that, special diet that's going to help you to avoid it altogether, that's what Nancy was talking about, some of that snake oil that we just have to be aware of. If there's anything that's been scientifically proven, we're summarizing it on the Dementia Friendly Nevada website. Cleveland Clinic, the Ruvo Center for Brain Health, also holds itself to a very high scientific standard and is a very reliable source of information. And so is the Alzheimer's Association. They have really great brain health resources as well that are all scientifically based.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. AJ, question on this side of the room. And Debbie, next, this lady here. Thank you.
The only thing I was wondering is, where do we hand our money in for it? What form? Check? Somebody here to select it for the expo?
This row was so good on questions regarding the expo. Obviously, we need to go back and redo our flyer with more information. So the website there would be the easiest place for us. So seniorseducationexpo.com. That's set up for payment, so you can just put in a credit card and pay. It also has the option on there for sending in a check, or if you have your checkbook with you and you want to go, see Annette or Alexa and give them the check and all your details, and we'll take care of it. And failing that, there's a phone number. Just call us or the phone number on the website, and we'll help you through whatever it is you need to get registered. Yeah, thank you. Great question. Debbie.
So the question I have is about when to be tested, and dealing with 3 different parents that had dementia and different kinds. I can see all of us just going in and calling our doctor and say, I want to get tested today, but that's probably not the right thing to do. But again, we were, Roger and I heard at one point that get an MRI to see where the brain matter is so that you have a baseline reading. And so there's a lot of information out there, and it's hard to know when. So is it good to get tested at a certain point, even if you do not think of that you have any symptoms, or is it at a point that you just kind of wait to see?
Who would like to take that? Denise, please.
Certainly don't wait to see. And I think we mentioned a little bit earlier, the Medicare Advantage of that annual wellness check that includes a cognitive test is kind of baseline. They also should be doing things like reviewing medications, making sure that, you can clarify if it's something that's treatable. That starts with that first. The Sanford Center for Aging has a wonderful clinic with a lot of professional assistants at UNR that does the wellness check. And so, okay, this is giving us an alert to something might be going on. And then commonly the referral is to a broader team. It could include a neurologist with testing such as an MRI or a CAT scan, a neuropsychologist, thorough review of medications to determine, like, okay, there are some concerns here, and we're going to move to the next step. and ask for those referrals through your GP, through the wellness check.
Can I,
Perfect.
the only
Thank
thing
you.
I just want to add to what Denise said, just don't stop with the cognitive screen. Denise laid out the follow-up steps beautifully there. And sadly, so many people will go to a primary care doctor, take a cognitive screen, which takes all of 5 or 10 minutes max, which is generally administered by an LPN or an RN, not even the physician themselves. And then they walk out of the primary care office with a diagnosis of Alzheimer's. You cannot diagnose dementia from a cognitive screen. It is only a screening tool. If it shows that there could be concern, then comprehensive cognitive evaluation is really warranted. But I just want to underscore, because it happens to so many people, that they walk out of their primary care office with a diagnosis of Alzheimer's from a 5-minute cognitive screen. It is not the way to practice medicine, folks. And that's not an accurate it might be an accurate diagnosis, but it would need to be confirmed through a thoughtful, comprehensive evaluation.
And Jennifer, is the reverse also true? I may go and have that screening and it may not show anything, yet myself or my family have concerns. We got 6 of the warning signs and somehow the screening didn't pick it up.
You know what?
Possible?
It could be possible for people who are really early, maybe a mild cognitive impairment. Interestingly, wow, I just lost my train of thought.
I guess I was getting at, should we be proactive?
Yeah. So
just helping you out there, Jennifer. Should we be proactive though, if we still have concerns, ask for another screening, a more comprehensive screening if we have concerns, warning signs?
Here's the rule of thumb I have. Memory loss is a pretty normal part of aging. When your memory loss starts to impair your ability to function in your daily life, get checked out. Okay, but just know some memory loss is very normal. A lot of older adults experience memory loss, just like most of us are walking around wearing glasses. Our eyes, our vision diminishes as we age. That's normal. So do our memories to a certain extent. If you are so affected by your memory loss, though, that you're having a hard time functioning in your daily life, please get checked out.
Thank you. Which side are we on? Who's AJ? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Susan, and I have a sister and brother-in-law in Minnesota in a very small town. We are pretty sure that he has at least onset of dementia. How can we encourage him to be tested or be on the draw clock with 10 to 2 on it during the wellness test? He is pretty sure the rest of us are crazy.
Good question.
Who would like to take that? Denise, do you have some advice?
Sure. You touched on a couple of things. Denial, right? And so encouragement, what's the language that we can use to have this, what can be a challenging conversation for my loved one to move forward while still in denial. Rural access to programs and services. We certainly know that that's in Nevada with our rural programs, that it's really hard to find resources. So it's really kind of navigating where he is, where he lives. The Alzheimer's Association, based on where their zip code might be, can route them to here's help, here's how to start that conversation to go further with the assessment process. Jennifer, Kathy, Nancy, other suggestions too, but it's very common to have heels dug in, and how do we navigate this conversation to go to the next step?
One of the things I'd like to add, Brett, is that when it's a situation like that, it's so difficult, but we really have to be proactive and think about, the what ifs, and safety is a #1 concern, of course, but just well-being and engagement and getting that person into getting some help. And all you have to do is Google dementia online and you get all kinds of information. Some of it's not always accurate, but look for an evidence-based source and look for a resource that's in your community that has knowledge about that, and then talking with the doctor in advance of an appointment is very helpful to get beyond just that clock drawing.
Thank you, Nancy. I saw a hand, one here. And Debbie, you've got the next question? And then over here.
Yes, my name is Pamela, and my mother passed away. She was 90 a year ago today. And her father also had dementia, and her older sister. Could you discuss more of the genetic risks?
Would that be one for you, Jennifer?
Involved in
Genetic
family
risks, or
members?
Nancy?
I'll just say that it's a risk factor. There's one type of early onset dementia that has a much stronger genetic link. And it generally happens to people who are much younger. So folks getting diagnosed in their 30s and 40s with younger onset, sorry, I think I said it's younger onset Alzheimer's. That has a stronger genetic link. Otherwise, it is a risk factor. And so just because your mother or grandmother even maybe lived with dementia, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll develop it as you age. It's just an accumulation of risk.
Thank you, Jennifer. And just before I forget, at our expo, we're actually having the Alzheimer's Association. We'll be doing another session in more detail, more specific for anyone who's interested. And also at the expo, the Sanford Center for Aging. I think they're doing 2 sessions. UNR, Sanford Center for Aging, have 2 great topics. We have time for maybe just 2 more quick questions before we wrap up.
Yes, what can you tell me about Prevagen? It's on TV a lot, and there's all these testimonies that it's so good and everything. I've been taking it like a month and a half, and I'm not sure if I can really tell if it's helped or not, because I've read that it takes 30 days, and I've read another one thing that says take 90 days. What can you tell me about this one?
I'll take that one. So there's a lot of things being sold that might actually help, with vitamins. Most people aren't getting enough vitamin D. We found that during COVID, and that was another risk factor for getting COVID and getting outside. There's a lot of things. I can't speak specifically to that particular supplement, nutraceutical you're speaking of, but there is a lot of things on the market that can help. I take a multivitamin every day because I don't get to always eat all the vegetables I want to. I would like to say that when you bet on the pill of healthy aging and lifestyle, we need to do it in the way that God created our food. And basically that's in the wholest form, most perfect form there is. We don't always we can't grow a garden, but it's best to eat fresh food at all times, and it would help us, our whole body. I'm speaking as a gerontologist that there's a lot of things we can do, like exercise every day. Absolutely imperative for growing your brain. All the things for heart healthy diet include a healthy brain diet. They're very similar with the mind diet and the Mediterranean diet that Jennifer has spoken on before. So I can't speak specifically to that, but I would say do your research and look, is it really helping you? Is it worth this? We spend a lot of money on things that we're looking for a quick fix, when in fact it is a lifetime of changing our habits. So even starting now, at whatever age you are in this room, picking a healthier habit. Like me, I don't sleep enough. I try to sleep more now. All kinds of things that you can do for a brain healthy risk reduction program. That's the best way to look at going forward.
Thank you. Very well said. Good advice for all of us. I
Right,
think we're hitting 11:30. You got 20 seconds, Jennifer.
Yeah, I asked Dr. Leslie Baker, who's the geriatric pharmacist at the Sanford Center for Aging, about Prevagen just yesterday in anticipation of a good question about Prevagen. And she said, Jennifer, if there is sufficient evidence behind Prevagen, then I, as a geriatric pharmacist, would be on it. But she's not. And so I thought that was a pretty good answer for me.
So remember, UNR has a great service. Their pharmacist that Jennifer just mentioned has been on our panel here several times. They have a free medication management program where they'll review what you're on. And that's a great service in our community if you're wondering about the medications or vitamins you're taking to get some additional input. So we've run out of time. I wish we had way more time. I'm sure we have lots and lots of questions. If I could just ask everyone to complete their yellow evaluation forms and be sure to turn those in, we'd really appreciate that. And I just want to thank you all for being here, and hopefully you can join us at the expo, and if not that, perhaps next month's seminar. So thank you all again for being here. Have a wonderful day. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Kathy, Jennifer, Nancy, and Denise for giving up your time and making this happen. We so appreciate you. Thank you all.